Hey guys, this is Antandra, and today I wanted to demo a freeware VST for you guys. And it's really awesome. It's by a guy named Matt Tytel. It's called Helm, and here's their website, or his website rather. And it runs on all platforms. You have Linux, Mac OS X, and Windows, and it even runs in a standalone version, which is really cool. And 32 and 64-bit, and it's free or donation based. And so here's what it looks like. The interface is really awesome. And so yeah, without further ado, let's just delve right into it. I've got an instance loaded up right here, and you can see right away you got this really nice oscilloscope visualizer right here. So that's a cool feature. And so right up here in the top left, you see this helmet. If you click on that, it just has some info about the software. You can change the size here. And then if we move over further, we have Save, Export, and Browse. So you can click here and browse through presets. So there's the factory bank, and then your user patches are here. Here's a few examples of some of the factory presets. What's cool is you can browse in several different categories at once inside of your preset bank, and you can do save as here and delete. You can export and import banks, and it'll tell you the author and what bank it's in and license if applicable, and you can hit done. So that's a few of the presets. So now let's do an initial patch again, and I'm just going to go over the various modules here and show you what they do. So we have two oscillators right here in the top left, and you got this crossover. It's a cross modulation, and basically it modulates the phase of the other oscillator. So you get some really interesting results with it. Up above the oscillators, you can use these sliders to change through different shapes, and then you have the fine tuning and transpose and semitones. And if you double click a parameter, it goes back to 0. You can turn up to 16 voices or 15 for each oscillator. And so if we were to listen to that right now, if I change the unison amount for each one, it's going to sound pretty thick. Now another interesting feature is this harmonize button. So if I turn those on, listen to what that does to the voices. Harmonized all of the harmonics basically. So let's take that off again. See how it's kind of more cloudy and detuned, and then we turn that on. quite interesting. You can play with the voice amount for some different effects. And then you have this feedback and the volume above it, and this oscilloscope. So the feedback is some sort of oscillator feedback, so you turn up the amount here. Careful, I'm going to turn down the volume because I was clipping really hard there. And then you can transpose it here and change the fine tuning. Which is really fun. And so then to the right of that, we have this stutter section. So if I turn that on, it sounds like this. Let's turn up these oscillators, or turn up the volume again because I turned the feedback off. And you can change the rate here. You can also change the buffer size or resample. And you can click here to change from seconds to tempo dotted, and tempo triplets. So if I change it to seconds, now it's in milliseconds. Get some really cool sound effects with that. And then you have this distortion section, also BPM, but it syncs to your host tempo unless you're in standalone mode. But yeah, we have this distortion with 4 different types. We have soft clip, hard clip, linear fold, and sine fold. And you can change the drive and dry wet mix here. So that's nice. And then up top you have this arpeggiator, so I can turn that on and choose a frequency. So then you go with 16 for now. And let's go ahead and turn down the decay and the attack, so it's real percussive. And let's hear what that sounds like. And you can change the tempo. You can choose triplets. Different patterns, so if you're playing multiple keys at once, like right now it's in the up pattern. You can choose down or up down as played. So then it'll play in the order that I press the keys. And then random. You can change the octave as well. And the gate. So yeah, a lot of fun with that. Then over here you have a sub oscillator. You can turn that up here on the mixer. Right now it's just a square, but you can choose whatever shape you want, so maybe a sine wave. You'll need pretty decent headphones or speakers to hear that bass tone, but if I go up an octave, you have this shuffle, which shuffles about the, it's like the pulse width modulation almost, like a weird form of that. And you can press this to go down an octave. So I'll have to raise it again an octave on my keyboard to hear it. Now if I turn that off and play the same note on the keyboard. And so yeah, mixing all 3 together, you could get something like Or transpose these as well. That's fun. I like that stutter with the millisecond frequency there. Add some distortion. Next up we have this filter, so we can turn that on. Can sweep through at the bottom here. And then you can choose different filter types or morph between them using this slider. So there's a band pass, and then we have a high pass. And you have the resonance over here. If you turn up this envelope depth, then it'll be connected to this filter envelope right here. So you also have the drive key tracking. So with that turned up, different keys will cause the filter to follow the key, so you get more consistent results, as opposed to when it's turned off. Each key is going to have more of a unique resonance with it turned off. So then we also have this steeper filter, the 24, and then we have this SH, so like a shelf you can turn up, and then you have the like a notch or like an all pass. And then you have like a high shelf. So that's the filter section. Then to the right of that you have this format. So if I turn that on, gives you a nice XY control for controlling the vowel sounds. Then we have a delay. The feedback frequency. Yeah, if you change the frequency, it gives you that kind of tape delay style, almost like a turntable scratching effect. Again, you can adjust from seconds, tempo dotted, and triplets. You have a mix here. And then you have a reverb below that. You can damp it. You can also change the feedback and the dry wet here. Can really help make it feel like it's in a space, like a real sound instead of something synthesized. And you have all your modulators and envelopes down below. So up here is like more sound generative type effects and oscillators and whatnot. And then down here is how you modulate all that. So you can click on these little helmets and then change whatever you want, and now that would be controlling the level of oscillator 1 inverted. Or I could have this envelope controlling the filter. And then you click again to exit the mapping mode. You can do that with all of these, including the filter envelope, the mod envelope, mono LFO1, mono LFO2. We have poly LFO, step sequencer, and the keyboard mod. So let's get into each of those a little bit more. So just like the amplitude envelope, you can map the filter envelope to whatever else you want. So you could even map it to its own attack. And then this mod envelope is the same kind of deal. So I can map that to the format, say. And down below with mono LFO1, we can map that to, say, the y-axis. And so you can put that on free, retrigger, or sync to playhead, and also adjust the rate here. So with retrigger on, every time I press a key, the LFO starts over. If I turn that to free, it's just going to keep going. And sync to playhead is similar to free, but I think it's more controlled by the DAW if you're playing and pausing it. Same kind of deal with mono LFO2. So I can map this to that. And say this cross modulation, see what that sounds like. You can even map it to its own tempo, which is nice. And then the poly LFO works just the same, except that it's poly, so if you press multiple keys, it behaves differently. Also, it's like it re-triggers every time, no matter what, whereas these ones have free. This one's always re-triggered. So yeah, that's the poly LFO. And you can also change the depth of these, I forgot to mention, and different shapes for these, including this glided randomness. Then you have the step sequencer, so I'm going to map that to something, say the pitch, or it could be anything, but I'll do the pitch. And now you can change the number of steps here up to 32, and then you have the frequency and again the different types of frequency, and you can turn up slide. So here's what it sounds like with the 32 steps played back at 1/8 notes. It sounds like nothing because we're turning down oscillator 1, which is the one that we're changing the pitch of. So let's try inverting that. So let's do the amplitude. Let's go ahead and turn that up. Okay, we're hearing something now. Doesn't sound good, but we're hearing something. Let's go ahead and change the pitch of this one as well, and let's do 24 instead of 32. Also, let's turn off this stutter, because that's probably creating its own resonant pitch because of how fast it's going. So yeah, that's the step sequencer. I could, instead of doing pitch, I could do, say, the format. Let's turn up the frequency. Turn the format back on. Yeah, and then if I turned up slide, and let's turn the frequency down a bit so you can hear it better. So here's just 1/8 with slide turned down. Or let's go even slower. Let's go half. And let's turn off the ARP. Now if I turn up slide, it's just going to slide between these steps. Let's turn it up a little bit. So you can see it smoothly moving over here, whereas if I turn this down, it's just jumping between them. Then you have this keyboard mod section, so you can map your pressure or aftertouch to whatever you want as well. Your mod wheel, note, pitch wheel, velocity, sensitivity, or random, so every note pressed will trigger a random value. So I can demo that here. Let's turn the ARP back on. So it's randomly changing the frequency of the filter. So if I turn the filter on now so we can hear that. It's pretty fun results. So yeah, that's the modulation section. Then down here you have the number of voices, so 1 up to 32 polyphony. And then pitch bend amount, so it's 2 by default. You can bump that up to whatever you want, up to 24. Velocity tracking. So that's how much it'll follow your velocity input. And then the portamento. So for that to work, you need to turn on the type, which is off by default. So auto will just bend between notes when they overlap. So if I played one note, let's turn off the ARP for this. So playing a C, and now if I play a high C, I can just play it an octave higher and it doesn't bend. But then if I hold down the low octave and play the high one, watch what happens. Or the other way. So if you turn this to on, now every note will bend regardless of whether they overlap or not. So let's hear what that sounds like. Quite interesting. You can also put on this Legato mode so that if notes overlap, it doesn't re-trigger the envelopes for the beginning of that note. So here's what that sounds like. So without it, let's see. That's just me holding down the low note and then pressing higher notes. Now if I turn legato on, now you can see that it doesn't create that kind of popping sound from re-triggering every time. Like that. So yeah, useful. So yeah, I guess that pretty well covers it. You can also randomize the ARP. I forgot to mention that. Oh wait, no, it's just set to random. That'd be cool though. But yeah, it's really quite a powerful synth. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention is on this Stutter device. So there's this softness slider, which is quite cool. So if I put this on a slower speed, let's do 1/4. Now if I turn this softness up, you can see it like ramps up the amplitude. So that's a really nice feature. And this goes down to like 8 Hertz here. Some really cool sound design possibilities with that. So yeah, Helm, it's a great synth. Can't beat the price. A free 99. And yeah, go out and buy it. Donate if you can. I highly recommend it. And make some great sounds. All right, until next time, I'm Antandra. Hope you got something out of this. Peace.